thank you for inviting me for this briefing. I'm glad that the MDBC has once again taken proactive steps to work with the state government to have this briefing in Penang. Being one of the top 3 tourist destinations in Malaysia, Penang is also amongst the top investment location of choice. And for the period from 2010 to August 2013, Penang was number 1 in terms of FDIs in Malaysia, attracting 19.7 billion ringgit, or nearly 20% of Malaysia's total FDI during that period. Livability of a city determines the success in attracting talents into the state. And ECA International selected Penang as the most livable city in Malaysia in 2012. Penang is also not only the national champion but also the world champion, and Lonely Planet listed Penang as the number 1 food destination of the world. I'm sure you can testify to the excellent food in Penang. As an international intelligence city, Penang leverages on building a livable city that attracts human talent and formulates people-centric policies that upgrades Penang to be a developed, sustainable, and inclusive economy without poverty. So naturally, this is focused on 3 key areas of growing the economy that is inclusive, establishing centers of excellence in our core competencies, and improving livability. Now, Penang has been able to not only foster a supply chain ecosystem of high quality and efficient supply services, but also embed ourselves in a global production network. With the foundation of the advanced manufacturing clusters, the state government aims to restore economic dynamism by promoting innovation in science and technology. As the Silicon Valley of Malaysia, with a dynamic and advanced manufacturing cluster, with manufacturing making up 48% of the state's GDP. To sustain our growth, Penang not only needs to attract high-growth E&E sectors, but also develop medical devices and aerospace in our manufacturing base. But I'm sure that also is not sufficient. So if we review our past successes, Malaysia and Penang's economy has shifted from extraction in the 1960s to industrialization, from the export of raw commodities to manufacturing. In other words, Penang's economy was factor-driven by relying on basic commodities before being efficiency-driven by relying on manufacturing. To win the future, Penang needs to be not only efficiency-driven, but also innovation-driven in manufacturing, services, and even the public sector. The key to future economic success is not an over-reliance on one sector, but to seek convergence of not only the manufacturing sector, but also both the services and the government sector. Services sector includes not only tourism, medical treatment and education, but also shared services, IT, and BPO, such as finance, accounting, and data processing. In seeking convergence, the government plays an important role as an enabler between the manufacturing and services sector. Government must also invest and innovate. The government must invest in infrastructure, people, incentives, and subsidies. The government must also innovate with new policies that stresses on 1. Liberalization of the existing rules and reducing red tape. 2. Divestment from non-core businesses, or accept that the business of government is to stay out of business. Thirdly, permit free and fair competition. And finally, encourage human capital formation, where human talent is now the new oil of the global economy. In seeking convergence, what we need to do is to ensure a partnership of equals between the 3 sectors of manufacturing, services, and government. In other words, a partnership with capital, labor, innovators with the government as an enabler. Penang's future prosperity depends on whether we can achieve convergence and thus our manufacturing services and government sectors can be both efficiency-driven and innovation-driven. In addition to the array of manufacturing and industrial jobs, services are an even bigger creator of wide-ranging employment through an extensive range of office functions in the ITO-BPO sector. This ITO-BPO hub that we want to create will help corporations in the state to take advantage of a globally accepted business and operating model which allows business to focus on core competencies. Developing the state's talented young people to move up the value chain is also a priority of the state government, including the key area of ICT. We shall at the same time encourage infrastructure development, especially in education, by attracting world-class educational institutions, not just at the university level, but also vocational level, adopting the German model, and thus generate employment opportunities for our youth. We are helping to build the capacity of the state as it moves towards a knowledge economy by maximizing local content, adding value through integrated industrial parks, and promoting economic diversification and entrepreneurship. In light of the demographic realities, this comprehensive framework offers a winning formula to create high-paying jobs. In other words, we are looking at creating a BPO industry in Penang. And as everyone knows that Penang has the necessary conditions towards establishing a BPO hub. In fact, KPMG has listed Penang as one of the 31 BPO hubs of the future. And we have actually received numerous investments from companies who are interested in establishing shared service organizations. And over the past 2 years, we have corporate giants such as Citigroup, Burma, the USD 17 billion ringgit corporation, food edible giant, First Solar, world's largest solar company, and of course Air Asia. I just had a meeting with Mr. Michael Zink from Citigroup, where Citigroup employs more than 1,000 local employees in Penang to run their largest regional trade and cash processing center for the transaction service business, with an annual volume of 20 million transactions worth 5.8 trillion US dollars. So looking at the intense demand for grade A office space, I think that the time has come for us to build this BPO hub. Apart from all these, as I said, famous names, there are also other SSO companies, shared services organizations such as IHS, ACMEL, toll forwarding from Australia, and of course Jurong Shipyard, and some of the companies listed here from Holland. Invariably, we find that these SSOs, these shared services organizations, established by this services company, they employ 100% Malaysians. Highly paid jobs where I'm sure foreign workers will not be able to fit the bill. And currently this sector is employing over 7,000 Malaysians in Penang. SSO, of course, can be easily incorporated into the proposed ITO BPO hub. Now we know that multinational corporations in Penang do not merely manufacture world-renowned products, they are also operating global SSO centers. Whether they are Intel, AMD, Jabil, Dell, Motorola, National Instruments, V. Brown, Mattel, Agilent Technology, Seagate, Shell, you name it, most of these companies are doing SSO. And we intend to attract them to come to Penang. There is growing knowledge intensity production in innovation-intensive areas, and growing interest in the services sector in the industrial clusters. And because we have identified the potential of ITO, BPO has a sunrise industry with tremendous growth potential, we are establishing an ITO, BPO hub in Penang. And today I would like to introduce to all the distinguished corporate captains here to the Penang ITO, Information and Technology Outsourcing, and BPO, Business Process Outsourcing Hub in Penang, next to the airport. With an expected gross national income of 3.3 billion ringgit or $1 billion US, the ITO BPO hub is directed towards diversifying the state's economy and enable the growth of a viable employment sector. The IT BPO hub comprises three components. One, a IT BPO park in Bandar Pass, next to the Penang International Airport, comprising 74 acres. That is a final piece of land of that size left on the Penang Island. You can't find it anywhere else. Prime location, as I said, next to the airport. It's a hidden secret, and we want to use it for something that would really create an explosive impact, if possible, to drive Penang into the 21st century. I really believe that these 74 acres reserved for the ITO BPO park, basically for those companies involved in SSO and business process outsourcing. That is the first component. And this IT BPO park will also include the first university with a top 100 world university ranking. So far, there's no foreign university with the top 100 university ranking in Malaysia. We hope that the first one will be in Penang. The second component is 7 acres of BPO, or 7 acres what we describe as BPO prime in Bayan Baru. The location is opposite PISA, or opposite the proposed exhibition center, SPICE, Subterranean Penang International Convention Exhibition Center. 7 acres directed towards the Information Technology Outsourcing Division, where you have all the computer experts doing their necessary data processing and computer processing. And finally, 100,000 square feet of creative animation triggers in the Georgetown Heritage Enclave to spark off the animation industry in Penang. The Penang State Government is therefore targeting the build-out of approximately 2.4 million square feet of Grade A office space. And we believe that we will be able to fill these offices with Grade A companies. The creative multimedia industry is much sought after, and Penang wants to go on the bandwagon, especially the animation industry. We have the talents, but I think we need to build the infrastructure. And you all may be surprised why we are doing it in the Heritage Enclave, because we have received inquiries from top animation companies that they only want to set up their office within the Georgetown Heritage Enclave. The reason why? You may be surprised. They feel that only in the Heritage Enclave like Georgetown, it can spark their creativity. Well, if Georgetown Heritage Enclave can inspire you, we will definitely do what it takes to draw you in. And that's why we have reserved several buildings, including the Yap Chor Ee building, as one of the identified spots for creative animation clusters. And also, of course, other buildings within the heritage enclave. And we hope to attract the creative types in the animation industry to come to Penang. And we can guarantee that they will also have a suitable environment where they will have the freedom to express what they think is most creative. You know, Penang is very famous, now has the art, culture and heritage capital of Malaysia. I'm sure you can testify to Penang's attractiveness. We have amazing vibrancy and dynamism in our art and cultural scene. It's just not the paintings and also the sculptures, but also the numerous art galleries that are now opening in Penang. Some of them, which I do not know also, but I think they have already been opened. And the reason why there's so much focus on Penang, because they know that Penang state government encourages the expression, encourages the freedom of artistic expression. In certain states, if you do wall paintings, you not only get whitewashed, you also get fined for 2,000 ringgit. But in Penang, if you do a good wall painting, we will not punish you. We may even give you 2,000 ringgit. So this 3.3 billion ringgit IT BPO hub brings a unique business model to Penang by leveraging on our manufacturing strengths, and is set to become a rich training ground for building new capabilities, skills and careers. And we intend to create 30,000 high-paying, knowledge-intensive and high-value jobs for Malaysians and Penangites over the course of 10 years. Now, Penang has recorded also impressive growth in tourism. With the promotion of Georgetown as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the organization of various festivals in music, arts and culture. You know about Georgetown Heritage Festival, our literary festival, our Gold Music Festival, our International Jazz Festival, the list goes on and on. And of course, the creation of a Bohemian art district within the Heritage Enclave with wall paintings and skilled sculptures. Penang International Airport recorded a 15% increase of tourist arrivals, with now hitting a high of 5.5 million tourist arrivals last year, compared to 4.8 million in 2012. And Penang recorded the top 3 tourist arrivals in the country with receipts of 8.6 billion ringgit in 2012. Medical tourism is becoming a more attractive form of tourism in Malaysia, and of course Penang is set to become a medical city. Malaysia is ranked 5th in the world for medical tourism destination in terms of reasonable costs with high quality medical services. And Penang has recorded again a steady growth of 15%. And we are proud to see Penang contributing 2/3 of the 250 million ringgit in medical tourism receipts nationwide. In closing, we will continue to work towards making Penang cleaner, greener, safer and healthier, because this is crucial towards realizing our vision to transform Penang into an international and intelligent city. To ensure that our economy is dynamic, resilient and capable of adapting to the volatile global environment, we must also be mindful of the need for solid fundamentals. And what are the solid fundamentals? Principally, good governance, integrity in leadership, and rule of law. In Penang, by adopting CAT governance, there is both stability and prosperity. And I think only then can Penang compete not only with other states in Malaysia, but also internationally, to achieve the trinity of choice, as a habitat of choice for residents, the destination of choice for tourists, and the location of choice for investors in setting up business. And I also been informed that we are also the selfie of choice I'll be one of the top 10 selfie spots in the world. Of course, we are the top food destination. But the list goes on. And we want to make Penang a cosmopolitan city, not only for local residents, but for all our foreign friends and visitors. Remember, our tagline for our visitors to Penang this year is just only one word: freedom. It's only when we are free, then can we be free to realize our human potential. And that is what Penang offers to everyone. A platform for you to freely realize your potential. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, I'm not going to do the welcome again because we're on a tight schedule, but I'm happy to have our boss here this afternoon. When I approached him on this event a few months ago, he wholeheartedly accepted, back in 2010. And this time, the state has packed out in a big way in his presence, and particularly, having Luc van der Blan here, His Excellency, is also very nice for this audience. Okay, so that's the European Union has Malaysia, particularly Penang, at heart. Now, to set the before I introduce the foreign speakers, I'd like to set the mindset of this meeting, and that is, we all know that in Penang lots of things can be improved, and I've been in other forums and meetings, and there were lots of complaints. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? We as investors, as foreign investors, and Chief Minister has mentioned quite a few. Okay, what we need here is interactivity. We heard about the plans. Okay, we all know that Penang would be blessed with a second airport, or at least the second runway, to not isolate it from the rest of the world if something happens. We also know that the channel needs to be deepened. Okay, all of these things. Let us, where we can, help the state to realize that, so that the infrastructure keeps pace with what all the developments that are announced this afternoon. So when we get to the questions and answers, I'm going to propose that whoever has one, a good proposal and a good question, please forward. We only have 30 minutes to do that. And as Marco already mentioned earlier, the entire session is taped this afternoon, and it will be posted on the MDBC website for the next 2 weeks. So those who would still like to provide input afterwards, you can do so by getting into our website. So thank you very much, and in the meantime, when the foreign speakers speak, think about how and if you have any good proposals, going forward. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Lim Ha, as a fellow of the Penang Institute, the think tank of this state. And Dr. Lim is a fellow at the Penang Institute and a fellow in finance and financial reporting at the University of Cambridge. He was previously a proprietor trader at the Credit Suisse London, a portfolio manager at the Singapore Hedge Fund, and an assistant professor at the University of Cambridge. Dr. Lim holds a PhD degree in finance from the University of Cambridge and is a qualified chartered accountant with the Institute of Chartered Accountant in England and Wales. He has trained with KPMG, Wilson and Wright & Co. in London. Dr. Lim, can I please invite you to the floor? Okay. By the way, each speaker will have 10 minutes, so we're going to monitor this in time. And I will raise my hand when you have 1 minute time.
What we are going to talk about is how can Penang realize the inspiration of being an international and intelligent city. Of course, we need a framework. And what we have is that because over the years, Penang has always been a hub in the region. And thinking back in terms of the relatives to the Dutch trading outpost, the Netherlands Trading Society has long established in Penang. And this is a photo of their building, now occupied by ABN AMRO at Beach Street, Penang. And the role of Penang in the whole region extends beyond this. It has been 100% the entrepreneur of Aceh pepper, but it also has been the main firearm supplier to Aceh, who were fighting the Dutch in the late 19th century. So what would Penang want to do? Penang wants to be, of course, the regional hub with an intelligent and international aspect to it. We need a framework. And because development always conjures up the image of spanking new buildings, wide roads, fancy nice apartments, but is these the apartment that we want? Or the type of wide roads that we want? These are not the type of development that is desirable for Penang's aspiration to achieve being an intelligent and international city. So what we have is, we have a framework of how Penang can be an intelligent and international city, putting the balanced society at the core of its development. A balanced society where it is intelligently creative, materially prosperous, socially progressive, environmentally sustainable. This Penang paradigm is actually the 10 years development plan for for Penang. And as such, what it's trying to do is to provide development more in terms of a holistic manner, thinking that development can be achieved in a slightly different manner to just the purely material sense. And globally, we can see that development can always usually come in 3 different manners. First, you have an idea, you need the private investment to drive it, and you need the public infrastructure. Of course, the Chief Minister has alluded to it that freedom is an important element, because within ideas, what we are talking is not only ideas for business, it's ideas for freedom, ideas to be innovative, and in investment, it's not just purely in terms of driving efficiency, making things easier to be manufactured, but also to make innovation a core part of the investment process. And of course, in public infrastructure, it's just not pure hard infrastructure like your airports, your ports, which are of course very important, but also the soft infrastructure, the respect of law, good governance, the elimination of corruption, all these aspects. Because when you start aggregating these 3 elements, what you will have is a process that would generate more positive manners. Positive in terms of higher economic dynamism, improve livability and sustainability of the environment, and progress in social inclusion and development. When you have all these integrated, it is important that all would have equal importance. If one were to place overemphasis on one particular element, it is not very palatable. You can imagine that you wouldn't want to be materially very prosperous and rich, but live in a bad condition, bad environment condition. As such, when we incorporate all these 3 elements, what we want to get is a balanced society. A balanced society which has emphasis on all these 3 important elements, because a balanced society would attract and retain more talent, would drive people to be more innovative, would drive people to retain and develop skills in Penang. And only because Penang is a land scarce state, we only have talent, and that's the importance of creating the right environment and the correct environment and the correct atmosphere to attract and retain all this talent. By attracting all this talent, what we hope to achieve is the balanced society. And with this balanced society being attained in the medium term, one hopes that it would generate more of the good ideas. For example, the achievement of balanced society would create more ideas, more private investment, better infrastructure, which would then drive on to creating a better livability, better environment whereby the society is more progressive, more intellectually demanding, and driving a higher level of innovation. So by incorporating a balanced society in the whole process, we want to create a vicious circle, a positive feedback loop, whereby one power, one element is going to drive the element of another, and hence create a cycle of prosperity and progress. And once Penang is successful in driving and in attracting a certain level of talent, a critical mass would be achieved, and Penang will be able to elevate itself and progress internationally as an intelligent city. All these, of course, sounds very holistic, but of course it is the holistic aspects which is important, because the progress of Penang very much hinges on talent, and talent look at Penang as a whole in a package and not just purely on a material perspective. We do know that these are the ingredients, so would we be able to achieve it? Yes, because if we look at it in another sense, we have achieved it in creating the 7th best food in the world. And it's not spicy, it is sourish, it is spicy, it is sweet, it's the blend of the best. So this is a testament of, to create the best, you need not have to be overly emphasized on any particular manner. And with this, I would like to end my presentation, and thank you.
Heard the Chief Minister's promise of Penang, of promises of the future. I just want to take this time to explain to you the role of Invest Penang in carrying out the State and the Chief Minister's vision. So, how does Invest Penang carry out its role? First, in policy advocation. Secondly, in FDI facilitation. Thirdly, in SME development. And fourthly, in talent attraction and retention. Now, given that the GDP of Penang is much divided almost equally between manufacturing and the service sector, I would like to spend the next 10 minutes to talk about, first, the industrial sector, the trend, and what kind of industries Penang is currently targeting and attracting. And secondly, on the IT BPO hub that was launched in 1st of March, just recently. This next slide, please. So, you see on the slide, these are the areas that Penang has been targeting for the last 3 to 5 years. So, the E&E sector and the semiconductor sector remains our core competency and remains the industries that Penang has been very strong in. So the SEMR is forecasting that the semiconductor material market has increased 1% in 2013 and 7% approaching 50 million in 2014. There's a lot of projection that the growth will happen mainly in the Internet of Things and the mobile industries. So I believe that a lot of companies within Penang is either shifting its production or shifting its strategy towards that area. Now, the other areas that we're targeting are the aerospace and avionics, and we have the likes of SAM, a Singapore Temasek company, and also Honeywell that has been established here over the last couple of years. LED remains one of our key focus, and to that we have companies like Osram, who is number 2 now in the world market of LED, and also Philips Lumileds. The medical device continues to be very prominent, and we have seen many medical device companies that have been very interested in Penang. And in Asia itself, this industry is expected to grow at an average CAGR of 9.6% and a market value which is expected to exceed $71 billion by 2015. And I think the latest addition to the medical device company in Penang is Hermeneutics, which is in Batu Kawan. And recently, we also have a very quiet Japanese company that's started construction in Penang Island itself. So these are the industries that we are currently promoting. This is not to say that we don't try to categorize ourselves as being choosy, but we, I think, have reached a stage where we know what kind of industries can be successful and what cannot be successful in Penang. And we are looking more on companies which are knowledge intensive and innovation-led manufacturing. So elements of R&D and design versus just purely assembly work or purely labor-intensive industries. The other, besides manufacturing, I think we've talked, the Chief Minister have talked a lot about services and SSO. Under the 10th Malaysia Plan, the service sector is expected to contribute 61% of the GDP by 2015, and that requires a growth of 7.2% annually. And the areas that we're promoting are the business support services, so control towers, R&D, design, regional establishment, medical tourism, creative multimedia, logistics, and international education. And then the other area which we feel that we should grow to help Penang achieve development status is the shared service IT BPO area. Now this area is currently worth $450 billion globally and expected to grow 6.4% CAGR. In Malaysia itself, it's expected to reach 1.7 billion in 2012, and it will double itself with a CAGR of 15% to create 85,000 jobs by 2014. The areas of services that we're targeting are ITO, BPO, and KPO. In Penang, we have heard that the KPMG has recognized Penang as the 31st BPO, potential BPO area in the world. So, now next slide. So, if you look at this map, we have actually divided our targeted areas of growth in the following areas. Now, E will be the next manufacturing hub for Penang. So this is the Batu Kawan Industrial Park, consisting of 1,500 acres of industrial land at the south of the island. So as if you go from the bridge, you just land at the foot of the second bridge. This will be targeting for manufacturing-based company, and as it is, we have already sold almost about 50% of the land that's available. D is going to be the new cyber park in Batu Kawan, incorporating the integrated live, work, play township. So this will be office spaces, first-grade office spaces, about 200 acres set. F is going to be the education hub in Batu Kawan, and this will meet the demand of high-level graduates in view of the high-knowledge economy that we are trying to promote in Penang. So we're going to have the HAL University, which is already announced that they will build their campus in Batu Kawan. A, B, and C are the sites that the Chief Minister has explained earlier, and also the sites that we have launched on March the 1st. So A is the 70 acres BPO park that is next to the airport. B, it will be the BPO Prime and Baru. This is just opposite Spice. And C is the creative animation triggers. So that will be 100,000 square foot of integrated arts and creative animation hub. That we have seen a few of the animation companies have actually approached us. We were made to understand that in California and in San Diego, there are many of these heritage warehouses that's been turned into animation hub. So this is an area that we're now seriously talking to many of the multimedia companies to create. So there are lots of pictures of the potential sites and the buildings up in the foyer. So this is my first marketing ploy, so please have a look at that. We will come up with all the milestones and the building readiness, plus also the space readiness and the rates very soon. Thank you.
The first time I came to Penang was 1996. I even celebrated New Year's Eve here. At that time I came as a tourist from New Delhi. It was like flying from a third world country to a first world country. And it still feels like that when going around Malaysia, including of course Penang, which is maybe even a bit more advanced in certain areas. I started this job in 2008. And when I first came to Penang, I was with a German delegation from the state of Baden-Württemberg, and we met the chief minister at that time, and I said, I started my job 1 week earlier than you did, and I'm happy you're still in this office, and I'm also happy to be here. The last time I met at a similar event like this, I also met the chief minister and came with news from Kuala Lumpur, just released on that day about the success of the individual states on attracting investments in Malaysia, and Penang was #1. I don't know how you're doing in 2013, but it's probably somewhere in the top 3, maybe #1, but it's not really so important. It's more about let's say, in our view, the quality of investment and the quantity. So big investments in oil and gas, of course, it's something, or other big investment doesn't mean that it creates a lot of jobs, has a lot of technology transfer. I think the strength of investments is also with the medium-sized companies, and as probably in any country of the world, the medium-sized companies make things happen in a country. Not all economies have medium-sized companies that really venture out of their country. Similar, contrary to Germany, where say the export quota and investments abroad is very high amongst SMEs. I can also report that Penang was the first destination of a German investment in 1891 by a company called Bain Meyer. They were merchants at that time. They're still merchants, they're still here, but they have developed in a quite significant way because they have specialized, and today they're not only merchants, but they're also producing in Malaysia specialized chemicals also for food processing. So these involvements we've seen with other companies. I must say, we talk regularly to German business. I come here once a month and we have a German Business Council. So kind of we have our ear what is happening in this state, and from what I hear, companies are very satisfied, very happy with here. Of course, people always complain about traffic. I don't know whether the second bridge will relieve these issues. I've heard now about the Penang airport, these kind of things. But from a businessman point of view, with production facilities, we don't have really many complaints. And proof of this that we see new investments coming up, but what's maybe even more important is that companies have been here since 20, 30 years, like B. Braun, like Bosch. They have so much confidence in this location that they increase their investments considerably. For instance, when I came here, B. Braun had 4,500 people working there. Now the last figure I heard last week is 6,500. So this is how it develops. and it's not easy to keep the situation. It depends on certain success factors, and I believe Penang has managed to manage those success factors. I would name 3. One is the infrastructure, and when I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm not only talking about energy, telecommunication, logistics, but it's also the soft infrastructure. It's about education and training, and it's the public administration. It smoothes the way for the business sector, something I want to touch upon a bit later on. The second one is qualified people, and obviously there are enough qualified people in this state, because companies, when I mentioned B. Brown, when I mentioned Bosch, companies that now look at Malaysia, they don't see it as a prolonged workbench anymore. And this is not sufficient because of the development in Malaysia. They require to find people who can assist them in designing systems and in achieving technology developments, in doing research and development also here in Malaysia. And so you not only find good workers, machinists, technological people, but also people who can assist companies in research and development to better their products and processes. And the third very important element, because doing business, creating production is also depending on the cost factor. And one beneficial element we find in Malaysia is that you find industrial partners who are able and willing to work together with foreign companies coming to Malaysia, providing them with products, certain components, with parts. And we've seen many companies, and this is a trend we also see in Germany, that production itself in Germany for many companies has become too expensive, so they concentrate more on the engineering and maybe on the whole system, but they also venture into other markets, not only because of the cost factor, because it's also because of the interest to develop new markets, to become closer to their customers, to provide services in a quicker and better way. So these are important factors which has influenced positively also the engagement of the German business community. I was told that we also should, let's say, talk about challenges here, or voicing wishes. I will have 2, but basically the wishes from the presentation of the Chief Minister are already fulfilled. One is lean government, not much bureaucracy. I would say that we have any trends of concern in Malaysia, but we have seen last 1 or 2 years certain instances where bureaucracy has been enlarged, has been tightened, licensing procedures have been made more cumbersome. And I still take it as let's say, individual cases which do not show a trend, which are not really something of concern. But since we've seen these cases, I take the opportunity to address them here. And of course, I was pleasant to hear by the Chief Minister that he sees the role of the government to create a framework. And this is probably almost a German position, because in Germany, for instance, we don't have industrial policy. What we have is a framework policy which creates an environment where business can thrive. Of course, always keeping the social element in parts. Germany will talk about the social economic policy, and I think countries and states who follow this are on the right track. The other thing is vocational training. I don't say education and training, I say specific vocational training, because from our involvement, my personal involvement, I say here Malaysia has certain weaknesses, certain things that can be improved. I've looked into the national occupational skills standards, for instance, the system, let's say the trying to get the private sector involved, but it has not really caught off. So I'm going to make a proposal to the Chief Minister. Maybe we can do something specific for Malaysia. I have a flyer. I'm not going to talk about the details here, but we're starting with something like this, a dual vocation training program, which is more or less shaped to to the German model. I could stop here. I'd say one last word is if you need assistance on the federal level, because a lot of things cannot be done by the states. When we talk about free trade agreements, the possibilities the ASEAN Economic Community 2015 offers, public procurement, these issues, please use us. You have us on our side, and we'll be happy to speak together with you and raise the word on these issues. Thank you very much.
My focus basically is going to be on the electronics industry. And to start off, I guess, we look at where Penang is today. We started with labor-intensive assembly factories, and today we have evolved into a very diversified industry. And Penang is now known as the heritage city, a livable city, a medical city, education city, a food city, and then we are going on into a sports city, ITO, BPO city, and so on. I think that's really very good. I'd like to applaud the government for making tremendous progress over the last 5 years. We have made the progress in having a positive budget. We have made progress in even our collection of rubbish and the market in general. Even you go to the market, things have improved. And so I asked the industry, what really you need to do we need to do to take Penang to the next level? I think you have heard about the usual complaint, which is the traffic jam. Now with the new bridge, people are concerned about traffic jam. And the others are basically, the key one basically talents. I think many speakers have spoken about talents and what you're going to do to attract and retain talents. And one of the major feedback is that the companies really want to grow in their design development efforts. With more than 40 years of experience in the electronics industry, manufacturing, we have been a major base. They've all now expanded into, as what our Honorable Chief Minister said, gone to SSO, but also many companies are trying to get into design development. In order to do that, they need high quality engineering graduates. We need more MSc and PhDs that can support the design development effort, and also to train more technicians to support the automation effort that is going on in the Penang state. In automation, I think we are quite a leader in automation itself, relative to other states and even in the region and the world. One other recommendation is that for Penang is to organize technology forums, because it's one of the areas that all these conferences are held elsewhere in Singapore and Hong Kong and elsewhere, Silicon Valley. But I think we can organize some of these high quality conferences, technical conferences, technology conferences in Penang. The other thing about helping the engineers to come back to Penang, the feedback has been that our cost of living is high, housing is getting very expensive, and we are looking for help or special effort in getting talents back, whereby we can provide them some special housing program. That is one of the recommendations given by the industry. And the other feedback I have for the industry is that in order to retain talent in the state of Penang, and also in Malaysia, is our wages. If you look back in the last 10 years, our average wage increase in the industry is about 5%. And out of that last 10 years, 2 years, I think they got zero because of recession and because of hard times the companies face. 10 years ago, we paid engineers about 2,500. 10 years later, we pay engineers about 2,800 to 3,000 ringgit today. So I think something is happening, something not right here about our wages. And yet at the same time, we complain we can't retain talent. Now, if you look at what other industries are paying, in the accounting firm or in the investment firm, they tell me that they pay, last time when we were paying 2,500 for engineers, they were paying about 1,500 to 1,800. And today they are paying 3,000. And yet, in the engineering field, we are still paying 3,000. So I see there is some problems with this. Not only that, we have a lot of talents doing regional work. We have talents everywhere in China, in Hong Kong, Singapore, everywhere in the world, even in the US. However, when they are there, if they take the local package, they get paid in US dollars, they get paid in Sing dollars. But when they're located here, the company pays them local wages. And I also have a problem with that. So you want to attract talent in the country, but you're not willing to pay when the guy is located here and not Singapore and not elsewhere. That's why talent moves, because when they see that there's this discrepancy, they go away. The other part of recommendation to the state is to build and develop the supply chain. One of the issues that the companies are facing is we want to outsource some of engineering services, some of the work out to our local companies. However, we don't have strong enough a supplier base with high technical capabilities. They also want to build a strong knowledge-based cluster, form an SME cluster that provide sharing and have collaboration between industry and the universities. So this development of supply chain, I think, is an opportunity for Penang. We missed that in the semiconductor industry, but now we have LED, we have solar, we have other medical devices where we can build the cluster. And I think more effort is needed to build that cluster so that we can compete with the rest of the world when the cluster is established. One other feedback that I'd like to give to the government is this lack of land issue. There are two recommendations here. One is that if you go around the FIZ, you'll see that there are many pieces of land that have not been used for over the last 20 years, but it's owned by the company. I think we should go back to the company and ask them, do you have any plans for the next 2 years or 3 years for the use of this land, and not just keep them for the last 20 years and have not done anything with that land. Maybe the government should take that back. And not only that, we can convert that, many of the single-story building to an integrated factory or integrated site, whereby you make the effective use of the land, either through integrated factory combined with the parking system, because one of the issues in Penang is parking. So this is just the recommendation. So based on that, I will just end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. We only have 10 minutes, so I won't address everybody personally. Yes, I'm 30 years here in Penang, and I call myself a big fan of Penang, a big fan of the government, Mr. Lim, doing a great job. Thank you for that. I also am a great advocate of Penang, and I, in the past, have very recently been successful of attracting investment Dutch companies coming to Penang as well. So, having said that, I'm also very much in favor of freedom. Most of the Dutch are, so I like your freedom idea. But we want to improve, of course, Penang, and there are still a few items we need to address. So forgive me if it might sound maybe not super nice, but yeah, some things needs to be mentioned anyway, right? So, two things I want to talk about: education, which was already mentioned a few times, and I want to talk about international city and how do the international people look at this city from our perspective and not only from the Penang perspective. So, pretty recently in the news, we foreigners got blamed for all the rises in property. And of course, that cannot be right, because the percentage of foreign buyers is very, very small, and so we need to have a better look at it. So, of course, it's easy to blame foreigners. The whole world is very good at that. But we have to have a look at the root cause. And that sounds very boring, I know. And but one of the statistics statistics also sound boring. The average household, the persons per household in Malaysia is 6.1. For foreigners, from people from the West, people from Holland, that is a shocking figure. Why so? In Holland, the average household is 2.2. So, see the massive difference. In Melbourne, one of the most livable cities in the world, it's 2.2. So this 2.2 seems to be a bit of a magical number. But what does this mean? Simply, there are not enough houses in Malaysia. And not a little bit, we need millions of houses. That's the problem. There is a demand side problem, there is not there's a demand side problem, supply side problem, not a demand side problem. So, and all the measurements that are being put into place are on the demand side. So, I'm a property owner myself, so it's close to my heart. Very recently we got a couple of new rules. State consent was 1,500 ringgit 2 years ago. Then it went up last year to 10,000 ringgit, no small fee. For the people who don't own a property in Penang, if you want to buy as a foreigner property in Penang, you have to go to the state, say, can I please buy a property? Yes, that's fine, pay me 1,500 ringgit. Okay, now it's pay me 10,000 ringgit, but that was of course not enough. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at this moment, since the 1st of February, it is 3% of the house price. Correct, right? Yes. So basically, what we're looking at, foreigners can only buy for a minimum of 1 million ringgit a condo, 2 million ringgit a landed property. So basically, the 1,500, then 10,000 is now a minimum of 30,000. For landed property, it's a minimum of 60,000. This is a massive increase, and it doesn't serve the purpose, because we foreigners are not the problem. So then, of course, the federal government, in all its wisdom, thought, well, we can improve on that, so let's come up with a property gain tax. Very good idea, and of course, we make it more expensive for the foreigners because they are the problem. So, yeah, that is a bit of as a foreigner, I feel very much, not so happy about it. So I think there is room for improvement there, and maybe today we can decide together that we're going to put the state consent back to 1,500 because it's serving no purpose. So international city. And another one to put on your list, I believe it's Forbes, came up with the best places to retire in the world. Penang scored a 3rd place. And I think Penang is a great place to retire. I totally agree. I'm not there yet. So, so until that time, I still have to work and depend on a thing like a work permit. Well, most of the companies talked about today are all big multinationals. They have a whole team of people taking care of the work permits. Smaller companies, SMEs, mentioned by my dear colleague from Germany. SMEs are very important. Well, as an SME, if you try to get a work permit, good luck. My first work permit took me 13 trips to the immigration. 13, 1, 3. Impossible. Every year we have to renew our student visa. For the kids, unfortunately, I got 4 kids, and of course it's not all synced, and it's not all synced with the passport dates, etc., etc. Many, many trips to the immigration per year. Unbelievable. So, going back to the retirement part, so the Malaysia My Second Home, great program, but from a visa standpoint of view, a much, much, much easier program. And the contribution to the economy, very limited. Because Malaysia My Second Home, people, impossible to buy a house. Because 2 million ringgits is just unbelievably expensive. A condo, 1 million ringgit, is out of reach for most Malaysia My Second Homers. So what do you see? The Malaysian, my second home, you see a lot of economical refugees who come here, enjoy the cheap and good food, and don't contribute anything to the economy. So there is a bit of a issue in the visas. Then very quickly, education. Like I mentioned before, I got 4 kids. They all went through or are in international schools. The Penang has seen a big rise in international schools since I arrived here. But interestingly enough, the kids in international schools are mostly locals. Nothing wrong with that, but I would be, as a local, not so happy if I have to pay these big fees to get an education where the other schools are for free. So a massive burden on the local population. But it gets worse. So my kids in the age from 21 to 15, they're all looking at universities, where to study, where to this. So everywhere you have these big, the UK, come and study in the UK and what have you. I've been recently to a few of these events. There are literally hundreds of people, hundreds of local people, all dying to go to the UK to study there. And of course, it's not for free. So, in my daughter's class, there are 9 local people and 1 international, being her. So one day the teacher asked, who is planning on studying in Malaysia? 0. This is really shocking, right? So all these kids, all these great talent, they will end up everywhere in the world except in Penang. So it's very good news that you've been able to attract an international top 100 university, and hopefully that's not too little too late, because all these kids should be studying here and should be getting jobs here, whether it's in animation or any of the other financial services. So yeah, hopefully we can improve that. And of course, lastly, I want to say also something about the traffic, because I think the traffic is not bad at all, and I'm probably the only one here who will say that. And now that the second bridge is open, I'm even more happy. I can go, if I want, of course it's illegal, I can go 200 kilometers per hour over the, I want to say old bridge, to say the first bridge. There's nobody on the bridge anymore. So can we please keep the second bridge free? I'm very happy to pay 7 ringgit or with the discount 5.60 for a bridge without traffic. I love it. It's beautiful. So, final note, I'm also very much in favor of your tunnel, and hopefully, oh yeah, there's one, sorry John, another 30 seconds, to, like I said earlier, the problem, the housing problem is a supply side problem. Well, we have a solution in Johor. The Chinese came up with a solution, calling it, from the German carpet bombing, they call it carpet building. A nice word of play. So the Chinese are developing there, and they build tens of thousands of houses in one shot. And that will really get your prices down. Of course, the local developers will be up in arms, but so if you got the guys to dig your tunnel, maybe you can have a few more who do a bit of carpet building. Okay, thank you.
Pleasure for me to be here, and I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon. It doesn't take a lot of convincing to get me here. It's fantastic to come to Penang. It's the 4th time I'm here in the year and a half that I've been posted in Malaysia, and it's great to reconnect with probably the most accessible and open, approachable chief minister that I know in this country. So it's a pleasure being here. I was asked to talk about Europe. That's always a little bit dangerous because I'm a fanatic believer in the European project and I could stay here for a while. But I'm also the last speaker, and I'm very sorry that after a very charismatic politician, very exciting business people, you now have to deal with a very boring diplomat. A Eurocrat, they call us. They invented a new word in Europe for bureaucrats working for the EU. They call us Eurocrats. So in my short intervention this afternoon, I just want to make the point that the EU matters to Malaysia and to Penang, and that the EU is open for business. I had a whole range of topics that I wanted to argue, but I have cut it down to 2. First of all, I want to argue that the EU, because of its sheer size and because of the way it works, is the natural partner for your trade and business ventures. And I would also like to argue that the EU and Malaysia have now a historic chance to bring their trade and investment relations to a whole new dimension. Why does the EU matter to you, and why is it your natural partner? And this is a fun part, this is the propaganda part. So let me start with a few figures. The European Union remains the largest economy in the world, with more than 500 million affluent consumers with a per capita GDP of 25,000 euro. Europe is still the world's largest trading bloc and negotiates with one very powerful voice with our trading partners. And it also has the largest stocks of foreign direct investment abroad, and is also the world's largest host of foreign direct investment. EU-Malaysia trade relations are very strong and resilient, and according to Matrade and MITI's figures over 2013, trade with the EU increased by 6.3% to 135.79 billion ringgit, which makes us, the EU, move up 1 notch from the year before and become Malaysia's 3rd largest trading partner after China and Singapore. And this despite I'm sure you heard about it, the economic problems that we had over the last couple of years in Europe. Exports to the EU increased by 5% to 65.29 billion ringgit, and that is mainly due to picking up of economic activities in several countries in the EU. The main driver of increased exports to the EU was E&E products, primarily electronic integrated circuits, as well as parts and accessories for computers. And imports rose 7.6%. Main import products were E&E products, transport equipment, as well as machinery, appliances, and parts. There are over 2,000 EU private companies, businesses that are present in Malaysia, and I've been told by my colleagues, the ambassadors of EU member states, that they're all very happy here, that they're all expanding, and that they're all making money. So the last 5 years, the EU also, and that includes 2012, has been consistently the largest source of foreign direct investment to Malaysia. And we were overtaken only last year by the US, by this massive investment in Penang, and also by Korea. The total EU FDI still amounted to 5.12 billion ringgit. Now, the EU is a very complex entity comprising 28 member states, with other European nations knocking on our door to join. I will spare you the intricacies of its legal and institutional setup. I'm still struggling with it after nearly 30 years. But what is very important for you to know is that when it comes down to doing business in or with the EU, you deal with one and you get the other 27 basically on a silver platter. The European Union is the largest single market in the world economy and has clear rules that are applicable to all trading partners. A single set of trade rules and administrative procedures and a single set of customs duties simplify trade and create a stable, predictable, and safe trading environment. Which means if you go over all these hurdles to get into one of the countries, exactly the same applies across the board in the 27 other. Duties on goods from outside the EU are paid when they first enter the EU, but after that, any import can freely move across the EU with no further cost. And most importantly, no further checks, and that thanks to harmonized rules across all sectors on, for example, technical standards, quality, labeling, and so on. Once a product is considered to be good in one country, then it is good in all the other EU member states. So you deal with one and you take all the others for free. And I said I was going to cut this short because I'm the last speaker. I referred in the beginning to the fact that we are now at a historical moment where we can boost significantly our trade and investment and make your life as an economic operator when trading with and investing in the EU a lot easier and better. How can we do that? Well, I have a very straight answer to this question, and that is by negotiating and concluding an ambitious, deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. As I mentioned earlier on, already today Malaysia and the EU have good trade relations, but we can and must do better. Malaysia is part of one of the most dynamic regions in the world, with other members of the ASEAN family ferociously competing for export markets and for attracting investors. A study that was conducted in 2006, at the time when we were considering negotiating a region-to-region FTA between the EU and ASEAN, a study indicated that Malaysia would be the clear winner from the FTA with the EU. And just to quote one figure, Malaysia's GDP would be boosted by 8% by 2020 if a deep and comprehensive FTA were to be concluded. And also, let's not forget that, and this is basically a testimony to the development of Malaysia, Malaysia graduated from our GSP system as of the 1st of January 2014. And for some businesses, this is not an easy thing to overcome, and they feel the pinch. We feel, and we're confident, that if you have a broad, wide range covering all goods and sectors, FTA, a lot of this pinch can be taken away. So in conclusion, finally some positive news about the state of the EU's economy. In 2013, the European Union's economy as a whole grew with 0.1%. I know, we get beside ourselves from excitement when we hear that. For you, it must be very pathetic. And the Eurozone, however, still contracted by 0.4%. But consumer and investor sentiment has picked up, and the latest forecasts for the Eurozone economies point to 1.2% growth in 2014 and 1.8% growth in 2015. And this will, of course, have a very positive impact on our trade performance also with Penang. Finally, my staff and I in Malaysia are ready, and we will always continue to do our utmost best to promote trade and business relations between Malaysia, in particular Penang, and the EU. On our part, we will always be available to the best of our possibilities to try and help all of you if you need the support of the EU. Thank you very much.
And this question is addressed to Ms. Lu Lilian of Invest Penang. And so from the presentation earlier, I could see that Invest Penang has picked selected segments out of the industries. I want to understand how does Invest Penang select this kind of projects that are deemed as viable. Aside from growth rate, what other kinds of parameters or yardsticks that Invest Penang adopt? Thank you.
Industries, we looked at which are the industries that Penang already has a competitive advantage. So a lot of this, if you would notice, are industries where that are offshoots of the E&E sector. So that's one thing. And we already have either a supplier base or a supply chain, or form part of the supply chain. Secondly, when it comes to company specifics, we do have our set of criteria in which we do due diligence of companies that comes in. It's a two-way due diligence. Usually a company would do a due diligence on the state, and we will also do a due diligence on the company as well. And that due diligence include factors like whether they are environmental, compliant. We look at whether they could be successful, how much of the direct labor percentage compared with professional talent compared to just purely direct labor ratio. So various criteria that we look at. Two advisory panels that help us. So one of them is from the industry sector. The other one, advisory panels from the services sector. So services comprises of like the real estate, the architectural, the medical people. So we do have two. And the other agency that we work very closely with is MIDA, which is the federal agency. So we work very closely with them to look at which areas of the industries that we are promoting, together with also what kind of, when the companies come in, we do due diligence together with MIDA. Thank you.
I would like to know what is your wish list to the federal government when it comes to improving the framework conditions for investment and trade destination of Penang.
Thanks, Alex. Actually, I would still focus on infrastructure, basically in terms of the ports, the airport, and of course public transport. And these are key areas that I think we really need to beef up. And of course, the digital intelligence. I feel completely baffled why other countries can have better speed on our broadband as compared to Malaysia. Something is very wrong. We just cannot get up to speed. I think these are very critical to develop Malaysia's future. I would say if you want Penang to be an international intelligence city, we can only achieve that if somehow the federal government is also somewhat intelligent. Because we cannot exist in isolation. We've got to be, we are part of the whole fabric of Malaysia. You cannot be an island. So we need also to push them to be a bit more intelligent. And to do that, I think digital intelligence is crucial. So I think that's one area. Number two, of course, the need to establish institutions for good governance and rule of law. You must not only honor the sanctity of contracts, you must also be just and also be honest. And this is critical. And thirdly, I think the time has come for us to face realities. For example, ventures like Proton accepts our national bill, IPPs, which gets subsidies, even though they earn billions of ringgit of profits. I think that doesn't work anymore in the modern environment. So I think these are issues that needs to be addressed. But if I can ask permission from the chairman, I want to address some of the questions raised not only by Alex but also by Siap just now. I think he was very passionate in his presentation, and I have full sympathy for what he said, especially when he talked about housing, purchase of property. Can I just emphasize, when we introduced these rules, we were concerned at foreign forces playing speculators. And it's not directed at Germans or Europeans, because Germans and Europeans don't play speculators. So you can make your guess who they are, or who they may be. But we were very concerned about that, and we felt that we had to also protect the local buyers. Right. Because if they get swept away, you'll be beyond the reach of the local residents. So if we had introduced rules, that's not only 3%, but also 2% levy for those who sell their properties within 3 years. So it was basically an anti-speculation measure to prevent prices from hitting the roof, so to speak. And I think you have seen that happening probably in certain places in Malaysia, and when that property bubble burst, the impact was very severe. So it was actually an it was basically a self-defensive measure, a preventive measure to prevent any bursting of the property bubble. Creation, and of course, bursting of the property bubble. As far as the 3% foreign levy is concerned, it's not applied to purchases by NMCs. Multinational corporations, they buy industrial land, they are not required to pay the 3%. I think you know that. Because they create employment. But when we are talking about private property, that's different. Unless you can indicate that you are giving employment or helping Penang towards becoming an international intelligence city, then perhaps consideration can be given, but that will be very rare.
So we can talk about it. That's what you're saying.
That will be very rare. I just give an example. If you are Brad Pitt, come on, man. Or if you are Claudia Schiffer, oh. So I'm talking about in that. No, it's not that. It's just that if you are able to project Penang as an international intelligence city, yes. So as I said, this is basically a preventive measure. As far as the M2H, Malaysia My Second Home, I think we still follow the federal guidelines. Yes. And then, again, as I said, on the question of 1 million and 2 million ringgit, the limits. 1 million for condos throughout Penang. On the island, 2 million for land purchases. But on the mainland, it's still 1 million on the mainland. Now, you can buy, for those who cannot afford, like what you mentioned, I feel very strongly because I know that not all foreigners are wealthy. There are some who cannot afford houses above 1 million ringgit. But if you are working here, you have a contract of employment with a multinational corporation who needs your skills, you can actually purchase a property less than 1 million. And we have given exemptions, but not yet for the 3%. But as far as purchasing of properties below 1 million or 2 million, we have given exemptions. And you don't have to be Claudia Schiffer or Brad Pitt. As far as the value of the property is concerned, but not for the 3%, because once you do that, I think you create a precedent. And that anti-speculative measure will not count or will not work anymore. So I think this is something that we need to do. I want to address your proposal for carpet building and carpet bagging by relying on the Chinese. That is where I'm concerned about. Because if you do carpet building, then what you will see is overbuilt situation. And you will not only kill the local housing industry, you may also end up finding that these houses are not purchased by locals. Because the houses that are built in Iskandar, they are always purchased by Chinese nationals. So I think it is a very fine balance that we have to deal with. And if in the process there are foreign purchasers who feel that they have to pay the 3%, I can feel for that. But I think for you, Shah, it's not a problem for you. Because you've already purchased.
I bought already, so
yes. So you're not affected. You're not affected by the 3%. You're not affected by the 2%, and you can enjoy the capital appreciation fully.
No, that's 5%. After 5 years, it's still 5% for foreigners. Yes. Yeah, not for locals, but for foreigners. So this. Yeah, of course.
No. Oh, the RPGT is not by the state government. That's by the federal government. So I'm sorry, I didn't register. So if it's for us, it's only 3 years, and if after 3 years, it's 0%. So it doesn't apply to foreign purchasers. But I think we can look at that when we win federal power in Putrajaya.
Yeah, it's too bad we foreigners cannot vote. Otherwise, some foreigners can apparently, but
you won't be able to get the vote if you say that. Okay, when you talk about visa, I feel very strongly about visa because I feel that this is one area that can and should be improved. And what we have done is that we try to be intermediary. I've asked Lillian. I've asked also my office. I've got 2 special investment officers. One of them is Jeffrey Chu. Can we stand up? Jeffrey? Oh, he's outside. I'll ask him to come in. Okay, Jeffrey Chu. CB Lim? Both is outside. Can you please come? This is Jeffrey Chu. He's my special investment officer, and he deals with all investment issues, including visa permits if necessary. But actually, Lillian here, Invest Penang also has a unit to facilitate applications for visas. So if you have problems with the immigration department, we are here to facilitate. And despite the immigration department being a federal agency, I think they have shown to be quite cooperative and helpful. So I think we can sort that out in Penang.
Yeah, and the talent core is a big improvement. I want to say, that it's once you're here, it's no longer, well, we know now how it works. So we pay them regular visits, and if you're there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to stand in line. Anyway, my office is nearby, so we take that for granted. About the carpet building, I think the problem in Penang is with housing from 200,000, 300,000 ringgit. The kids at one stage going to get married and they have to stay in the parents' house because they cannot afford to buy anything. There is not enough affordable housing, right? So I think the carpet builders can be of use there. And a lot of people are saying that, I see so many of these buildings, they look empty, and at night I don't see any lights. So there is some mismatch between what is built and what is needed as well. But still, I think there's a massive shortage of houses, and that's why the prices are going up. It's a simple supply and demand issue. Another thing I want to highlight, which is not well known, if you as a foreigner go to a bank here and you ask for a mortgage, the maximum mortgage you can get is 70%. I know that's not under the state or under the federal, but that's what the banks are doing. So this is also not so easy. On top of it, and that might be for every Malaysian the same, I don't know, but it's not very common in Europe. You have to pay off your property until you're 70 years old. So meaning if you're 50, I'm not there yet of course, meaning if you're 50 you have to pay back your mortgage in 20 years. Meaning that's also a big burden, and your monthly payments will be higher because of that. So my point, federal is teasing us, state is not helping too much, and the banks are also not helping too much. So it's really hard for foreigners to buy property. Just believe me.
Okay. Thank you. You still want to go?
Just give me 2 more minutes now. If you talk about this repayment and loans, I think this is a private arrangement with the banks. There's nothing that can contribute there. But I would say that if you look at for those who already own existing properties, I think these rules imposed by the state government doesn't affect you. It only affects those who want to purchase properties, and with the present state of the Malaysian ringgit, I think it's still very attractive.
Yeah, that's a bit a misconception.
Well,
there are some Americans probably also here as well, right? I recently had a friend who, it's a couple of years ago, even before they hit the wall in 2008, he left Penang. He bought online a house in the US, 1 acre of land, 5-bedroom house for $250,000 US, being then 750,000 ringgit. Well, 750,000 ringgit buys you not even a chicken farm here, right?
But that's Penang. And when you talk about when you talk about building affordable homes, I think we realize that we need to build more affordable homes. That's why the state government is getting involved in building affordable homes. And we cannot deny the fact that Penang has becoming more attractive over the last 5-6 years. That to the extent that you have so many returnees, you have so many, even as I said, foreign purchasers. You have so many people from outside Penang wanting to stay in Penang. You look at many of these development projects. The reason why they are priced so high is because they can get buyers. The developers would never build expensive homes if they cannot sell them. Now they can sell them. I think that is the issue. So we have no choice but to implement new rules, which of course the developers are not very happy. We compel them to build affordable homes. We force them to build affordable homes within a certain range. And they're not happy because they can build houses which are more than $1 million, sometimes even higher than that, because they can sell them. If they can't sell them, they'll be out of business. And then that indicates that Penang is so attractive because it is Penang, as I mentioned just now. So what we are doing is that we are trying to implement rules to, as I said, to force the construction of affordable homes. Those which are within the range of those yappies or those who are just coming out to start off as an engineer or an architect or an accountant. And we hope that the situation would normalize or would stabilize in the next 5 years. So, as I said, you can't do this building overnight, but the government is taking proactive steps to try to, as I said, alleviate and mitigate some of these problems. Now, the other questions that was asked was land by this Dr. Wong, empty land, which are unused. I think we have already started taking measures. Dr. Rosli is well aware of that, and we got a whole list. Definitely, we would proceed with trying to take some of this land back and sell it to genuine manufacturers. Well, I want to thank you for supporting the underwater or underseaway tunnel, as well as traffic. Traffic is a perennial problem. Apart from affordable housing, the other problem that we face is traffic. And I think the principal cause is that we are unable to get federal government's approval for a public transport. We are still working on it. But you know, it's very difficult to do any proposed financing of a public transport system when it is the federal government that issues the license. No one will put in 2 billion ringgit if their license can be pulled back anytime by the federal government. I think that is a critical issue that has to be dealt with. And we are still, of course, trying to work on it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we just sit down and do nothing. So that's why, since we can't get the first option of a public transport, we are now at least working on the second best option, which is building the underwater tunnel, the third link, building more roads from Tanjung Bunga to Teluk Bahang and Dr. Fringhi, also from Gurney Drive to Tun Lim Chong Expressway, and from Aitam to Tun Dr. Lim Chong Expressway. We are actually actively building roads, and I've just spoken to the President of the Penang Municipal Council that we are also intent on building roads at the Paya-Trubuk area, because it's one of the most densely populated areas in Penang, and we will try at least to rely on these roads to alleviate the problem. And on international schools, I can understand. No, if you say that most of your children's classmates, they do not want to study in Malaysia, they want to go overseas. Number one is that they can afford to do so, because it's not cheap.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you say afford, but it's more or less they don't have a choice. If they want to get ahead in life. So I know a lot of people, parents, who really can't afford and really have to put every cent into it to get their kids educated. And that's I find it a sad situation.
If you can't afford, you can't afford. That's period. You don't even think about going overseas. You have to choose the local option. There's no choice. Now what we want to do in Penang is to give those who can't afford to go overseas the local option is studying in a top-class university in Penang. That's why we've got HAL University over. We've got the Asian Women Leadership University over. We've got KDU University over. Because we know that the state of our Malaysian universities is so desperate that it has no value outside Malaysia. And that's why many students, they want to get into a world-class university so that they can at least market their degree when they go overseas. And for that reason, we are bringing these top-class universities to Penang to give them an extra option. And just one final point. When Alex talked about vocational schools, I'm fully in agreement with you. We need to work on vocational education. And that's why we are talking to German companies, and we will be very appreciative of your assistance. We will definitely ask Lillian to look you up. Instead of you calling her, she will call you. So that we can work with the German companies, and we will see what we can do in order to set up vocational schools. following the German model. You know, I went to Berlin recently. I went to B. Braun. I'm very impressed by B. Braun's vocational educational system. I thought it was just excellent, and we will definitely follow up on that, and we hope that, again, Penang will be the first state in Malaysia to have the German vocational system in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Minister. I had a question here from a lady who preferred not to ask the question directly, but it had more to do with, you already answered that, Chief Minister, about congestion and keeping Penang a clean, unpolluted, healthy and safe island to live in, which public transport is my favorite advocate. Okay, I think you answered that already, and I hope the lady who put the question forward is satisfied with that answer. Are there any more questions from the room? Yes.
Hello, I'm James Lockhead. I've been in Penang for 30 years. Keeps me young. I've done many different things on many different occasions. Today I'm representing Penang Stop Human Trafficking campaign. And the question I want to put to the panel is how do we deal with the many, many challenges from the reality here in Penang, where such a significant population, such a significant part of the workforce are migrants and refugees. Migrants and refugees that we very rarely hear about. If we talk about freedom, we talk about inclusion, we talk about balanced society. Of course, it doesn't apply to many, many of the migrants and refugees here in Penang. We know how many are abused, how many situations there are which are either blatantly human trafficking or indirectly human trafficking. We know the concern around the region about modern-day slavery. And we, as Penang, looking forward to the promise of an international and intelligent city, have to do something about it. It's not that we haven't done it. As our wonderful Chief Minister has, of course, launched the campaign that I represent here today. The Penang Paradigm talks about some of the things that we need to do together, and in particular talks about setting up a state task force, which I think would be a fantastic way forward to address some of the issues related to migrants, refugees, outsourcing agents, human trafficking, and so on. So, state task force, can we expedite that, possibly? It talks about promoting an ethical employment policy for employers. And I think many of us in this room are very concerned, but inadvertently we might be in a position of employing trafficked or in some way mistreated workers simply because we have no control over our subcontracting, who we're subcontracting from. So this whole idea of fair labour, I think, is something which many of us in this room are already involved in, and we need to move that forward. So I would love to hear the panel's views on how we can address these kinds of issues to realise our promise for everyone in Penang to be free and inclusive.
In America, human trafficking is an issue globally, and it's not unique to Penang. What Penang can do is, of course, to elevate itself to be more of a balanced society, recognizing that such behavior and such practices is not something accepted in Penang. This, of course, would provide one way of deterring the possibilities of human trafficking in Penang. Of course, the second aspect of it, which is the direct approach of it, which is having a task force to reduce such incidences. These, I think, should be looked in a more slightly larger scale. It is not a local specific problem, but it's a global problem. But of course, locally, it's something that we should be doing in cooperation, of course, with the federal government, which controls the immigration policies of the nation.
Okay, thank you.
John, shall I say a few things about it as well?
But very short. Okay.
Very short. Now, the industry, the electronics industry, has a code of conduct, and and they are enforcing that on suppliers like me. So just on the shop floor, they come and audit facilities, whether you're bonded labor, etc., unvolunteer labor, payments of the people. That is actually such a strict code of conduct that I totally gave up using foreign workers. And I am now only using local workers, which is also not easy because I have to get them all the way from Bali. So which is, for you guys that don't know, that is Thailand. That is all the way towards the Thai border. They have to travel up and down every day. So the foreign labor's big problem. The industry is working hard on it. The code of conduct that is in place and is being enforced is very harsh. And I'm sure a lot of companies here have big problems to comply with the code of conduct.
Well stated.
Rather lighter topic. My name is Philip Cousins, the principal of the Prince of Wales Island.
Can you be a little louder, please?
Yes. It's on, I think. I'm closer. Sorry, my name is Philip Cousins. I'm principal of the Prince of Wales Island International School, and a rather lighter question for the Chief Minister, and perhaps for the amusement of the Ambassador from the EU. There's an institution called the Model European Parliament. It's a youth parliament, a mock parliament that meets twice a year in capital cities from over Europe, and it celebrates its 20th anniversary in 2 weeks' time. In fact, until over those 20 years, I think, for the entire 20 years, it's been organised from The Hague in Holland. There are 5 students who will be making history in 2 weeks' time. They are 4 Malaysian students and 1 Uzbek girl whose parents are here under the MM2H programme. And they will be the first delegation of non-European students to participate in the Model European Parliament. And so, Chief Minister, question please. I wonder if you would allow those 5 students to take the greetings and the best wishes of the Chief Minister of Penang to the Model European Parliament in Vienna in 2 weeks' time.
More than pleased to ask her to represent Penang. And of course, I would like to convey my felicitations to Prince of Wales Island for that success. And also, I think this is another indication that not only the breadth and diversity of our students, but the fact that they are doing very well, not only Penang, but in your school. So perhaps, well, for those who are thinking of international schools and have some reservations, you've got a principal here that you can really talk to afterwards. Thank you.
Well, he took enough of my money already.
I just want to add my congratulations to the students and to the school. This is fantastic. This is actually one of the things that we try to promote as much as we can. We are very regular participants and co-organizers of higher education fairs in Malaysia that we usually link with conferences together with the Ministry of Education. And this is exactly one of the examples of exchange of students and getting to know what the EU is all about and have this interaction that is highly admirable. So my congratulations also to you, to the school.
Congratulations to the Penang State Government for the recent launch of the BPO Hub. Just now, Dr. Lin, you mentioned about self-sustaining cycle. And I wonder whether self-sufficiency is one of the aspects in making an international city. CM, you mentioned extensively about investments in infrastructure, especially in the roads, to disperse the traffic. I'm just wondering whether we should be self-sufficient in terms of water. We have a very good and efficient PDA, and we are depending a lot on raw water from Muda River, and whether it is possible that we produce our own water, just like Singapore. Thank you.
Efficiency. There's different aspects of it, whether you're looking at it in terms of water, whether you're looking at defense and security and food, etc. Penang is a small state, it's land scarce, and if you can hear from the debate on the discussion today, there are many bigger issues: property prices, affordability, transportation. All these would require land, and of course, all the investments that we bring into the state would require land. So, whether we can afford to be a city to be self-sufficient in terms of food, that is a separate issue, because thus Penang has the comparative advantage in making itself self-sufficient in food, or whether food is such that it's a product, it's a commodity that we can afford to buy externally from sources with high level of security. For example, from the northern states of Peninsular Malaysia, from the northern provinces of Sumatra, southern Thailand, etc. Whether we can have the means to be able to get access to all these food. And in terms of water, of course, I'm sure the state government would support any measures to improve the level of efficiency and the conservation of the use of water in Penang. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I want to thank Anna for asking that question. When you talk about sustainability, I think it's just not only in terms of environment, or in terms of resources. I think what's most important is sustainability. Whether this development can allow the lower income groups to be able to enjoy the basic necessities of life. So and for example, housing. I mean, there's always complaints about the rules that were imposed for those at the higher or middle income bracket, but sometimes we feel that it's necessary so that we can give a fair go to those from the low income groups. So we are not going to please everyone, but what we hope to achieve is at least to reduce the inequality that exists within all societies throughout the world. On the question of sustainability of water resources, Penang is very fortunate that we have a very efficient management. I was reading an article in the Age that mentions nearly 800 projects, 800 development projects in Selangor just cannot go on because of water problems. So of course they have to wait until 2017 when the Langan 2 plant is completed before these 800 projects can be approved. Now, despite the pace of development over the last 6 years be more than the previous 18 years, Penang is still able to meet the water demand. So we don't have water demand management problems. Neither do we have water supply management problems, because Penang, PBA, is basically well managed. So even though the pace of development over the last 6 years is more than the previous 18 years, we can still meet the water demands. And I think that is something that we take for granted in Penang. Why do I say that? Because we waste water. We use 302 liters per person per day, when the national average is only 213. And United Nations recommendation is 165 liters. So we are actually using water 50% more than the national average. Why? Because perhaps we are too efficient, our water rates are too cheap. We've got the lowest NRW in the country, non-revenue water, that means there are no leakages from the pipe, 17.6%, when the national average is 36.4%. We are more than 100% efficient than the national average. But because our water rates are too cheap, people take water for granted, they waste water. And they know that there will be no water rationing in March. I already say that, and I will stick to it. There will be no water rationing in March. And to be very frank, even if it doesn't rain until the end of April, there will be likely no water rationing in April. But then, when I say that, people will still continue to waste water. That's why I say that I will do a review on the 1st of April. But then they know that I will not do water rationing, or that the PVA will not do water rationing, because you can imagine, it's terrible. You You just ask those people in Selangor where they have water rationing. It's a nightmare. And if we can avoid that, we'll do everything possible to avoid that. No water rationing in March. Unlikely to have water rationing in April, even if there's not a single drop of rain. Of course, we'll review that in 1st of April to make sure that we are okay. But I think we are quite okay. But then when I say that, you always water. So please conserve water. Okay, and having said that, what is the future? Because we get our water basically from Sungai Muda, which is actually sourced from Kedah. But the stream flows into Penang, the river flows into Penang. If you talk about riparian rights, that belongs to Penang. And we have all the agreements to prove it. So, what would happen if, let's say, suddenly they block off water? Now, that will happen if we are a foreign country. I'm committed to Malaysia, and I believe that as part of the Malaysian Federation, we are all fellow citizens. This will not happen. Because I believe, and I'm committed, as everyone here is, we are committed to Malaysia. This will not happen. But we have to diversify our sources. And that's why we are also looking at Sungai Krian in Perak. But rest assured, as long as you have effective supply and demand water management, Penang is okay. I think that is a very strong endorsement and advertisement for those companies who are thinking of investing in Malaysia. You need water for your manufacturing industries. So when you come to Penang, you know that this is a state with no water problems. Thank you.
I'm not really 21 years in Penang. I'm glad to say that Georgetown has been the last 5 years booming, and is what I was looking for when I came to Penang. And I'm glad that things is happening in Georgetown. But working now for the last 5 years at the beach, I just would like to see when can we see a possibility that all these small businesses running around the road who are not legitimate, not licensed, can be running the same as we hotels registered, being licensed, sorry, and follow the same rules, and at least don't pollute, do their job, pay exactly the same tax as we do, but just follow the same rules. I've been waiting for long.
Thank you for that question. I think it's a question of sustainability again. And also, for these groups, I think we've got to differentiate between genuine low-income hawkers and those who actually build stores where they rent it out at a huge profit themselves. So I think this is something that we need to differentiate. So I think it's a very difficult question because it is a social issue. For example, if you look at the hotels along Batu Ferringhi, some of these traders were not selling food, but selling bags, selling the handicrafts, not that of course, and then all these items that they have. Actually, in a way, they are an attraction on their own for tourists, for foreign tourists especially. They say they'll be very happy. I just bought a scrap off for 15 ringgit and it looks like Prada, LV, or even Hermes, you know, which only very few in my country can afford. But I said this gives employment and, well, as I said, food to feed their families. But at the same time, we are also aware of the ugly side, and we are trying to see what we can do to alleviate the problem. But before we do that, of course, because that takes some time, I think cleanliness is of paramount importance. We are going to ensure, and that is where our YDP, the two council presidents are here, that we are not going to argue whether you are legal or not, whether you are legitimate or illegitimate. We are saying that every person has a duty to be clean. So if you are not clean, we will punish you. The question of whether you are legitimate or illegitimate does not arise. So I think we hope that this will at least solve some of the problems that you face. But of course, a long-term solution is needed if you want to, as I said, find a solution that would at least in a way satisfy both sides. They need to survive, but at the same time, the hotel who are legal businesses paying licenses, they also demand certain standards to be met. I think give us some time to work something out. And at the same time, I hope we can also put in these representations in writing. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
What's among the main factors of concentration when we want to attract foreign investors? But of late, we have a lot of policies such as minimum wage implementation, electricity and water tariff increase. So first, to dear PM, how will this impact our competitiveness, Penang's competitiveness? And secondly, to our foreign panelists, how will this impact your business decision to still stay in Malaysia or Penang? Thank you.
Other countries become more attractive. But at the same time, I think you've got to look at value for money. Cost is not everything. I think human talent is now one of the more important requirements. I find that the interest in Penang has grown, especially from other traditional sources of investment, such as Japan, Europe, and also US, because costs in other countries has also risen. Not only Penang, but also other countries have risen. And I think we've got certain very important advantages, especially our command of English and the availability of human talent. Now we need to deepen the pool. We need to broaden the areas of expertise. And that's why I say we were all talking about universities, vocational schools, and also setting up centers of excellence, especially in science, technology, and Dr. Wong Siu Hai is one of those close advocates. But I think if we want to forever remain a low-cost production center, that is not the way forward. We have to escape the middle-income trap and become a high-income economy. That is why we are going heavily into the ITO BPO hub, because we feel that we have to move up the value chain. We cannot be producing, assembling stuff alone. We got to do R&D. We got to do services, and I think we got to be to be producing, building and producing human talent. And that's why I will probably end my intervention by showing a video clip of the ITO BPO hub that we just launched on the 1st of March.
Correct. Thank you, Chief Minister. High value. Penang also will see a startup in semiconductors. This time not in Kulin, but it will be front end and it will be unique in the world. And it will be in Penang. Narrowly, it should be very nice, and that's why he wants it to be in Penang. He was a senior executive in Silterra, and he knows what he's doing. And I will help him. Okay. That's a one. Please take note.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to what the Chief Minister has said about the cost. Yes, costs have risen everywhere actually. 15 years ago, China was low cost, and today they exceeded us. But I think one of the key factors, other than cost, other than talents, I think we have a big advantage. I think despite our lower quality graduates we are facing today, but we still have a lot of talent across the whole industry. But the issue here is more, one of the key issues here is the stability of the government. You know, if you go other countries, there's so many other issues that have caused disruption in their business. In Malaysia, over the last, I think 40 years, we did not have a single disruption in business other than, I think there was one blackout in the whole country at one time. But other than that, we don't have social issues and so on. So that's some of the other factors that would be that the companies consider. no water rationing too. But the other thing I think is important is that as the cost rises, the company, if you go into the company, every company actually drives productivity. And they normally will make at least a 10% productivity improvement every year at the minimum. They try very hard, and that's, I think, will continue to push the talent, to achieve even better results over time. You have that kind of challenge in front of you. So I see that with that kind of challenge, and that people are trying hard to make the difference and make Malaysia more competitive in many different ways, other than just cost itself. I think we have a big advantage. Thank you.
Long time, and for this great show up. I think it's a great audience. I also want to thank the Chief Minister, Deputy Chief Minister, of course, without going to everybody, Your Excellency as well, thank you. I've been living in Malaysia myself on and off since 2002. It's also a while as well, and I've always enjoyed visiting Penang. Not only because of the great food, but also the great environment. I like Batu Ferringhi as well. I'm staying there actually this week. And yeah, it's great to see that Penang has also become a great place to invest. And I think that's why we're all here. That's why we're all very keen to hear what Mr. Chief Minister had to say. And I think you started this very well by explaining that Penang, while it started exporting commodities, it has grown to a manufacturing base, basically an innovation-driven Silicon Valley of Malaysia by means of an integrated approach. I think it's a good way to sum up what you were saying. Shared services and BPO's a big growth area. This video also, which was just shown, very impressive. I think attests to that. It's great to see Georgetown also sparking the creative spirit of art and culture. I think in the balance of life, that's also very important. It's not all about business. It's also about creating a balanced environment, also including the arts. I liked your comment about saying that Penang continues to aim to be a leaner, meaner, safer and healthier. And also, of course, that, again, on the cultural side, Penang is in the top 10 of selfies in the world. And I would ask you to do a selfie with me later on. So the tagline is great: freedom to freely realize your potential. I think in a balanced way, I think that's very important. After that, Ms. Lu Li Liang, General Manager of Invest Penang, I think summed it up quite well what the target sectors are for Penang. I will not go through all the details, but it's very important to see, again, that services and SSO is a big growth area and key focus of the country as a whole as well. And the above will contribute to Penang's key objective of becoming a knowledge-intensive state, and I think we've seen that come back throughout this afternoon. Mr. Alexander Stadtfeld, from our German colleagues from the German Chamber of Commerce, I think also had a good comment. Penang has many different types of faces, many different types of cities. And one of the major challenges, again coming back along the afternoon, is that it's a challenge to attract and retain talent. It's important to organize high-quality technology forums, not only, of course, together with the Germans, but we would also, of course, like to be part of that as the MDBC as well, through the Dutch connections. It's also interesting to see the challenges of average wage being discussed. On one hand, of course, that can create a conflict, as was also addressed by one of the questions just now. And what do you do if the cost of labor goes up? What does Penang want to do? Does Penang want to invest in low-cost labor or high-skilled labor that adds to the GDP? I think the answer was very clear to that. Lack of land issue was also addressed, and of course the increase to build and develop the supply chain in the semiconductor industry. That came from MCHAN. Let me see. We have Mr. Schaak, quite a lively debate, I think, also on stage just now. I think the main thing is that he highlighted is that freedom is important. There's challenges again in education. There's also a challenge in potentially the international perspective of Penang not being always so friendly, possibly to foreigners, in terms of buying properties and the limitations that apply to that. Education, the challenges there, I think that was also clear. It was great to hear that the traffic was good enough. So, and I also attest to that. I've lived in Jakarta as well. And I can attest that, if people complain even in Kuala Lumpur about the traffic, I tell them just go to Mumbai, go to Jakarta, go to Bangkok, and then come back to me and complain about the traffic. And I think in Penang, even if people say it's busy on the road, I think it's not that bad. Mr. Luc van der Bon, head of the EU delegation, I think did a great sales pitch of the interest of Penang and Malaysia to work closely with the EU on the free trade agreement. That I think discussion has been ongoing for a while. It's very important. I think Europe is a good example of how things could potentially be organized within ASEAN as well, in terms of more freer trade, more freer movement of goods. EU is a good example. You import it into one country. Of course, I would be saying preferably Holland. To our Germans, I would say Germany is okay too. But it's a good example, I think, of what the EU can mean for Malaysia, also as a sparring partner, I think, to exchange ideas. Let's see, out of the panel discussion, I think, a lot of things came back again that were just mentioned. Labor, education is very important. It's very important for, I think, Penang and Malaysia as a whole, and to move towards a developed country. The Vision 2020 is that Malaysia makes the shift to high income labor, high skilled labor, not be stuck in the low income or middle income track. I think that came back. I liked the question to the Chief Minister, what you need from the federal government. I liked the honesty bit, and also the infrastructure, and not only airport but also broadband, and I think that is definitely not growing as fast in Malaysia as it should, to basically enable Malaysia and also Penang. But Penang will need the Malaysian federal government for that as well, and also the big national telecommunications companies, of course, to invest in infrastructure. Important also mentioning the federal government needing to revisit current investments like Proton and other investments, and I think Penang is showing the way on how to do things the right way. Let me see, anything else? Yeah, I think I like the model EU Parliament. I think that's another good example. There's a nice comment made and a nice gesture of Mr. Chief Minister to be part of that as well. It's a great example also of bilateral relations also on the cultural side, not only on the trade side. And I think both of them need to be in balance to have a harmonious both business and also cultural relationship. With that, I think I hope I didn't miss anything. With that, I would like to ask Mr. Ton Mandemaker on stage. Marco? Not yet? Oh, okay. I would like to invite Mr. Marco Winter on stage first. And with that, I thank you very much again for your presence. I hope I made a bit of an overview that was appropriate to this event. And again, thank you very much. And I look forward to meeting all of you and seeing all of you network together in our network event, which is almost as important, I think, as the event itself. Thank you very much.